Hello and welcome to Overcome a Mental Health Podcast. I'm your host, Travis White, and I am excited for today's episode. This is a place where you can speak about your mental health. And I'm here tonight with Justin Briggs. Justin is a husband, father, author, and lightning strike survivor. He has built the life of his dreams and is here to help individuals remove blocks, overcome fears, find their passion in life, and achieve their dreams. Justin, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure having you. And I'm just going to turn the microphone right over to you and have you tell us about your journey.
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing for me has been kind of overcoming a lightning strike. And like you said, um, I don't love the term survivor, but I definitely did survive it, which I'm happy to still be here and still going afterwards. It was actually 10 years ago, I think a couple weeks ago was the 10th anniversary. And it's very closely tied to my youngest daughter who just turned 10. So it happened a week after she was born. So my wife was just coming out of the hospital. We have a newborn at home. It happened when I was working. So I actually was in the field. I was working as a backpacking guide at the time. And it was, I would say, the most, transformative event that I've experienced. I've talked to a lot of people, other survivors, that it just kind of changes everything. There's, the time before it happened and the time after, kind of separate points of my life.
And what do you remember most vividly about the strike?
Luckily, I stayed conscious for it. It happens a lot of times where you can be killed instantly. It's, one of the highest fatality of any kind of incident like that. I can't remember. I did a bunch of research when I was in the hospital right afterwards, just to kind of see where I was at. It's like a 70 to 80% fatality rate for lightning strikes. So happy to be, in the minority there in the group of survivors. And staying conscious during it was definitely a blessing. The times where people are, knocked unconscious, or, it messes with everything in your body, you can have your heart stop or stop breathing. So thankful that none of that happened. But the kind of most shocking thing for me was the inability to move. So I would call it like a paralyzed for a short period of time, where all of the energy and electricity went into my body but didn't exit. So what happens a lot of times is it will kind of go in, one part and exit another part. It went into my leg. It came up from the ground and just absorbed all of that energy. And so, our bodies are all energy and electricity, and it just seized every muscle in my body. So I was basically kind of like in the fetal position, laying on the ground, but any point in my body that could bend, arms, wrists, legs, everything was kind of seized up and stayed in that position for a while. And so I was kind of just panicked for the inability to move.
Yeah, that's crazy. I can only imagine like what was going through your head at that time. How long did it take for you to like grasp like what really happened to you in that moment?
It's hard to say because it was, I guess I knew what happened instantly with the, it's like an explosion. So with the, concussive force and the sound and the light, it's a huge flash of light, obviously. And so I knew what happened instantly, but really, laying there on the ground, immobilized, was just like, okay, well, I'm not dead, which is great. And kind of taking stock of, okay, well, I'm breathing, and the only thing I could move was my head. So I was just, locked up on the ground. Um, and I think the first thought was, okay, well, I can't move, but can I, kind of getting a bearing of what senses do I have? So I, was in the middle of a hailstorm, is actually how it started. So it was, a summer storm, lots of hail. So there were hailstones covering the ground. So I, kind of rolled over and put my hand and my face in the, ice cubes basically, and couldn't feel any cold, which was really surprising. You're laying in ice, it should feel, then I couldn't feel anything. So not being able to move and not being able to sense that was, I would say, the most shocking and terrifying part of it. Luckily, I would say within a few minutes, I was able to start getting some movement, kind of like from my core, and getting to the point where I could, shift my weight a little bit, and start to move. So we had other staff was out there. The participants that we were guiding were out there. So it's kind of like the need to get back to everybody, and kind of assess the situation. And so once I was able to move, the first thing that I was starting to do is kind of like an army crawl, that I could move my arms enough to wiggle my body a few feet to get back to everybody else.
And that's just bizarre. Like, I can't even imagine like being a bystander and just like being on. I don't even think I would know what to do to even help you out. And, but what did your initial physical injuries look like?
So when we finally got to the hospital, it was probably several hours, because we were backcountry, um, to get to a good hospital. Major extent of it was like muscle fatigue, muscle enzymes. So they compared it in the hospital, to running a marathon or doing something extreme, extremely taxing on your muscles in a very short period of time. So their concern in the hospital was, I can't remember the name of it, but it's whatever enzyme happens when you use your muscles, that being dumped into my bloodstream kind of in a short period of time. So just checking liver functions, kidney functions, making sure everything internally is still healthy and safe. So it was a lot of flushing things out, taking blood regularly and checking that just to make sure those things were okay. That was like the first couple days. Had a ruptured eardrum and a little bit of blood in my ear from the concussive force. So I haven't had it tested. My wife definitely can tell one side is different than the other, maybe like 75% in one ear versus the other. And I would say the biggest lingering thing is what it affected in my leg. So where it kind of um, came up my right leg and had a burn scar on my leg, really affected everything in that area. So my foot, my ankle, going up my lower leg was pretty bad for a while, and took a lot of physical therapy to help with that.
And do you have any like lingering pains, or is it pretty much all gone now?
Physically, no, everything's gone. I would say it took probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 years before, uh, feeling back to normal. Initially, it was a lot of nerve pain, a lot of nerve damage, a lot of soreness, and just kind of weakness. Uh, I did, like I said, the physical therapy was definitely a game changer. There was actually like one place that I went to that does, it's like I can't remember if it's an infrared or whatever it is, but it's some kind of laser light therapy that was crucial in like the healing process. So everything in my foot and ankle, using that laser therapy was such a big difference before and after.
Yeah, I can imagine. I've actually heard a little bit about kind of that laser
Mhm.
infrared light therapy, and
Yeah.
from what I understand, it does wonders to heal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And side note, just me being me, but we actually got this thing my wife and I did, and it's this thing that you put up your nose when you start
Mhm.
feeling sick, and
Mhm.
this infrared light.
Yeah.
And if you do it at the right time, your signs and symptoms completely go away. I think it takes like 2 or 3 times, and it's actually really helps.
Yeah. Nice.
Sorry, sidetrack there, but
That's okay. I haven't heard of that before.
yeah, they're great. They're just these little teeny things.
Nice.
Let's dig more into like the emotional side of things here. Was the most difficult part of recovery when it came to like the emotional side and psychological recovery part?
I would say, it's a traumatic event kind of in all aspects. So obviously, there's the physical side, mentally and emotionally, uh, kind of I don't, I wouldn't consider it PTSD level. My dad had PTSD. I've talked to a lot of people um, who have uh, gone through that. I wouldn't say it's at that level, but there are definitely, you know, lingering kind of things that would, bring up or affect my emotional state, mental state. So, obviously storms just in general for the short period afterwards, it was like very sensitive. It's like I can I can feel it or, sense it off in the distance. Like I'm going inside, even
Yeah,
if it's not raining. And I think the biggest thing was the, um, like the explosion, like the light and kind of like, uh, you know, bomb going off sensation, uh, stuck around for a while to where, I would have dreams and it would be like, that's kind of like the end of the dream, like not even attached to anything else. It would just be like, I wake up like in a panic because the, you know, strike just happened and it's not like I had a dream about being back there. It's just like, unrelated and the explosion goes off, in my mind and I wake up in a panic. And that lasted for, uh, definitely a few years afterwards and kind of took a lot of time to process the event and, beyond the physical healing, the mental and emotional healing to get past that, fear that had so much control over me.
yeah. And did you have to use any sort of therapy or anything to get through the nightmares or the somewhat PTSD that you explained to? Did you have to use any type of therapy, or how did you overcome that part?
So really, uh, not in a traditional sense, of going to a therapist, but it's the same idea of talking about it, with, friends and family. Um, and really, I think once my understanding of the event and kind of the things that led up to it and things afterwards, that understanding and kind of acceptance shifted. That was when I really noticed, being able to let go of things and there was less of that fear and anxiety around it.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be tough. Another thing that I'm curious about is you said you had a newborn at the time. How did that? Let's see. I'm trying to think of how to word it. How was your wife like able to navigate the situation with a newborn? And did you have any other kids at the time, or was it just the one?
Yeah. So our oldest daughter was 3 at the time.
Three,
Yeah.
three and a
So,
newborn. That's tough.
yeah. So I find it funny, the initial conversation that we had, which I still kind of joke around with my wife about it. So she was, like I said, a week out of the hospital. She had a C-section for the birth. So major surgery, she's still recovering at home and trying to take care of a, young kid and a newborn. So I had only been at work for a few days, but we were able to communicate. So even when I was working and the schedule was very weird where we would work a week at a time and then have a week off. So when I would go away out of the house and gone for a week straight, it's not like coming home at night, but still able to communicate. So, I'd be able to call when I got service or send texts. So she was used to be checking in every once in a while. And so the strike happened. I've been in the hospital for a few hours. They say everything's, looking okay. And decided to call my wife and check in with her and, let her know everything that was happening. And as soon as I got on the phone with her, she kind of launched in about her day, what she was going through and, the pains that she was having, and her stomach was upset, and, all the different things that come with recovering from surgery and a C-section. So it was just kind of letting her vent. And it was a good 5 to maybe 10 minutes of just, decompressing, talking about her day, everything that was going on before I, let her know what was going on with me. And when I told her, she didn't believe me. She, it was like, that's not funny. Don't joke around about stuff like that. So I had to send her a picture of, my burned up foot in the hospital. I didn't want her to freak out because obviously she has so much going on herself. But, I'm good. I'm alive. I'm, mostly intact. And, I'll be home as soon as possible. Yeah, the fact she's got mad at me for not saying something immediately, like, whatever I'm going through, just interrupt me and tell me, like, you're in the hospital. But,
Yeah, I would have probably done the same thing and let my wife vent before I said anything, just because it's like she's getting out her frustration before, I guess, the bigger blow.
right. Yeah, I don't need to add to your plate.
Yeah, yeah, that's crazy. And those dark moments that you've been explaining, and how were you able to stay strong for your family even while you were struggling?
So, like I said, the kind of realization or understanding of why all of this happened in the first place was really instrumental for me. And it definitely took a while. It wasn't a quick process. Um, so I think once I had kind of talked to people about the incident initially, it took a while for the realization to hit. But um, so it came to me where I basically called this into being, or, created this thing happening to me without even intending to or realizing it. So it was probably a year or so before the strike happened. I was talking to my wife, sitting outside, summer thunderstorms off in the distance. I've always been fascinated by lightning, just the, power and magnitude. People describe it like the temperature and energy of the surface of the sun in an instant. And it's, happens all over the place, but it's not something that we can really comprehend, that much power. And just kind of random comment to her that I said, I wonder what it would feel like to be hit by lightning, not realizing. And, she laughed it off and, didn't really pay much attention to it or talk about it after that, just something random that I said. And I'm glad I put the stipulation that if I could survive. So the whole piece of it, if I could experience that much power and, live to tell the tale. And I said that, I put that out there. So realizing that that was something that I had asked for and I got it was, kind of a huge revelation. And so, moving forward, it's like, even in those dark times, it's like, there's a lot of pain and suffering and, challenge, but that was something that I asked for. And I got it. So, learning that lesson of like, be careful what you wish for, be careful what you ask for. So now, I only put out there positive things that I want to have happen. It's like, all right, if I'm going to say something, it's going to be intentional. It's going to be, for my good, my family's good, the greater good. Um, so, and also kind of recognizing that it is like an ability or a power that we have, to create things and bring things into life, into reality. So, people ask afterwards, even in the hospital and days after, and, whenever I talk to people about it, if I notice anything like a superhero that, things have changed. I tried in the hospital touching my phone to a finger to my phone to see if I could charge it or have any kind of electrical changes, but no physical, superpowers. But I would say that realization of like, this is the power that we have as kind of a superpower now. So using words as a tool or a power.
Yeah, I hear all this, and first of all, I hope I haven't said anything to my wife that I'm going to manifest upon myself.
You got to go back
Because
and check.
I was like, I've been sitting here for a second, like,
Yeah.
is there anything? Like, I don't think there has been, but I never know because,
Yeah.
and a lot of times I say stuff out of sarcasm and stuff. So I hope I haven't said anything that's going to
Yeah. You got to
like
realize the
happen to me.
intention.
But then, second thing that I was thinking about was I hear your story, and I was like, I just think you're so lucky to. Let's see, I don't know, have so much less happen to you than what could have been. Like I don't want to minimize it at all because that's not what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
But I feel like it could have been so much worse. But you,
Absolutely.
not that what you went through wasn't hard or challenging, but
No, I
you're you're
agree. I've
you're
talked to
here and
other survivors and, the physical effects, that could be, lingering, the emotional damage. Yeah. It's definitely for how bad it was. And, it was traumatic. It's weird to say I'm grateful that it happened and it happened the way that it did. Moving forward from it, I, I appreciate, you know, the things that led up to it and the moment and everything afterwards. So yeah, it's weird to say, being grateful that I got struck by lightning. I don't want it to happen again. That's for sure. It's a one and done, I don't, wish it upon anybody else. I would not recommend, hey, this is an experience for everybody.
yeah.
Definitely not.
And I don't personally think it sounds weird when you say that you're grateful for it because it's our to me our most challenging times are the ones that teach us the most about ourselves. So that moment though that you were, you know, now exploring the idea of uh, you manifesting it yourself, how did that shift your perspective on life and your own personal power?
Yeah, that's where things really started to turn for me because going through kind of that dark period that is, like you said, um, having those challenges and struggles kind of defines, okay, which way are you going to go, succumb to, you know, all those things and kind of let the darkness, take over or, decide, to do something different and make a change and, learn from it, grow from it, whatever it is. And that's so much harder, to make that decision and then to, keep making that decision every day and kind of moving down that path. Uh, for some reason, I don't really know why or where it comes from, but I really enjoy the struggle. Um, I've had other kind of, you know, big events and, that's just one of them. But those times are what I don't enjoy it the most. Because obviously the, great times after the struggle are amazing. The ability to see the progress and all the, fruits of your labor. I love that part of it. But there's something about being challenged. Am I able to rise to the occasion? What about my skills and abilities and fortitude can I apply here? And, you know, what can I learn from it? It's always like the opportunity to evolve and grow in those times is something that I enjoy. Um, and so I think learning that about myself and also sharing that with others, I don't think that's a typical response to challenging events and struggle. So, people are always kind of curious about that and want that for themselves. And I think a lot of times there's the desire there and just the understanding or the, I guess, guidance or skills needed to kind of go through that process isn't always there. So that's what I love, sharing with people and then giving them those tools so that they can go on and do it, for themselves. And the same thing, then they can go on and do it for other people. So it's kind of that pay it forward mentality and, just keeps growing and spreading throughout people throughout the world.
Yeah, I love that. And I admire your totally positive mindset through these struggles because being honest, I don't always have that. My wife always tells me I'm very pessimistic
Okay.
and I'm trying to overcome that because she's the more optimist in our relationship. And so like every time I'm going through something bad, she has to sit me down and be like, okay, don't be pessimistic about it. Like things are going to be better. Can't get any worse from here. I'm like, well, can't they? Like, are you sure? So she keeps me on my toes, but I really love that positive mindset. So somebody who's kind of struggling with that, what tools would you give them or advice would you give them to start thinking, like get their mind into a place where they can think that way?
So definitely starting small is always the kind of basis for it. So, we do things every day, every week, every month, sometimes without even realizing, that we just, overcame something or, did something challenging. And so figuring out and identifying those things in your daily life is crucial to be like, you know, instead of overlooking it or just, like downplaying it, doing the opposite. So it's like, identifying it, focusing on it, kind of like shedding light on I do things. I, have overcome things or, big events in the past. So recognizing those successes and then building on it moving forward is okay, whatever the next, big thing that comes up is again starting small. So I think what happens a lot is whatever the challenge at hand is seems daunting because it's, complicated or lots of steps or, might take a lot of time. And once it's broken down into, manageable things like, what is it? How do you eat an elephant? Right. One bite at a time. It's like, yeah, you're not going to, swallow a whole elephant. You're not going to take on this huge project or, event all at once. So you take it one bite at a time and you have that consistency is the greatest thing. If you can do anything for a long period of time, then anything's possible.
And you hit on a word that I really like right there is consistency. Because I think when it comes to, and I'm not just saying mental health here, I think physical, it's right there with it. But if you're consistent in doing something, you can overcome anything. And it's so much easier to stay focused. So, with this journey of self discovery and going through your recovery, how did that experience evolve your relationships with maybe your wife or as a father?
Yeah, it was huge. So kind of my transformation was, going from really just kind of existing and, going through the motions to, a lot of people having experiences, like this or, other uh, traumatic events. It's like a second chance at life. I wouldn't say that was really the driving force or kind of sentiment for me, but just there's, more to experience. And I want to, I asked for this major experience and I got it. So I was like, well, what else can I ask for? So once things started to improve kind of internally for me, how can I share that with others? So, starting with my wife and kids, building our relationship. My communication was something that I had always struggled with from, the way that I was raised, being kind of more quiet, closed off, you don't share things, don't talk about a lot of things. But just because, your past or the way things were done doesn't mean it's, the best way. And so changing that up for myself and communicating with my wife and then seeing what it does and, what it's able to bring about, and grow the connection and make things so much better. Wanting to do more of that. And then with our kids, they were young at the time. Um, I was able to stay at home with them, and just, experience everything, the good, the bad, the boring, the exciting, but being able to kind of see them progress through everything, kind of got me more in touch with my own inner child and seeing everything through their eyes and wanting to give them experiences, and lessons and, all the things that I didn't have. And so being able to have that awareness for myself and then being able to share it with them was huge.
That's really cool. It sounds like that being able to stay home with your kids, it helped shape your healing.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really cool. And I love this stuff. I love every piece of what you're saying. It just makes me like think of my own life and what I can change
Hmm.
going forward. And
Yeah.
that's a big reason why I do this is as for everybody else to my listeners first to hear the stories,
Hmm.
but also like it gives me motivation as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
In the very beginning, and as I was telling people who you were, one of the words that popped up was author. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. That actually kind of came about right after the lightning strike. So, um, not something that I ever would have thought about, or, as a kid, it was like no desire to write, even, in school, in high school, any kind of English assignment, writing assignment, is like begrudgingly like, okay, I just have to get this done for a grade. It wasn't taking joy in writing. Uh, so it was an interesting um, realization that it was something that I wanted to do, when it came about. So I had the idea, um, not sure when exactly after, but, being at home and recovering and, like I said, at home with two kids and a lot of time on my hands and not the most engaging conversations with a newborn and a young kid. Seeing movies was always really big for me, taking them to the theater, for the first time when they were young. And I feel like it's been this way for a while where movies, versus like when we were younger, now is more spin-offs, recreations, sequels, right? There's not a lot of original things, new stories coming out in movies. And a big favorite genre of mine has always been sci-fi. And, seeing different things that come out. I would say every couple of years, there's a great, sci-fi movie. Um, but kind of what else could be done? What kind of new ideas haven't been, explored in that genre? And not really sure how I would get a movie made. It's not something that I could control. Even if I did, write a screenplay, the chances of it being made into a movie are very small. But what I do have control over is writing something, that I could put out there. So switching from kind of the movie realm to book realm, where it's like if I tell the story, like a movie, it's something that I can put out there in terms of a book series. So then, opened up the computer and fired up a Word document and started putting ideas down. And it was such a process. I've talked to other people that have gotten books out. Some people are able to crank it out in a few months. Some people take years. So mine was on the longer end. And I would say from start to finish of the first book was about 6 years. And, there's a lot of things that come up during that time and a lot of hesitation. At a point, it was just done. And, I was kind of just sitting on it, hesitant to publish it. But yeah, it's been, another journey, learning process, challenge, all those things to, come to a point where I just published the second book in the series a couple months ago and, working on the third book in the series. Like I said, it's not something that I ever thought that I would kind of have, be a part of my life, my bio. But now that it's out there, I talk to people, people read it and ask questions. And that's like my favorite thing is discussing it, how it affected people, what they thought of it. I've had these ideas and things going around my mind for years now. So that's been, I think, my favorite part.
That's really cool. Even though you said you sat on it for a bit,
Yeah.
now it's out there. You did it. Kudos for you. I can't tell you how many times that I've had an idea and just didn't even do anything about it. And I see somebody else like create something that's like it, and I'm like, why didn't I just do that when I said I was going to do it?
Yeah, that's what the interesting thing I've seen with like creativity and ideas is, it's almost like it comes to you, right? Like you are presented with this idea and you don't really know, kind of the catalyst or the inspiration behind it. It's just that like you have it, and if it's hard to say like does it that same idea kind of come to a bunch of people, because there are stories like that where it's like, this person is creating this thing or this person is, writing this thing or whatever it is. And it's like, how do so many people have, kind of similar things? And what's your interpretation of it? Because like whatever you thought of and creative might be different from somebody else.
Yeah, it's crazy. I want to say it was my therapist. I was talking to him, and I honestly think it was about the idea of my podcast and having a place for to speak about mental health for people. And he said, because I started seeing him like really a lot before I started this. I started this back in January, and he mentioned to me, he said, "No, just you have this idea. I think it's great. You just need to push forward and do it. Otherwise, somebody else is going to get the same idea and do exactly, almost probably to a T, take it from you as if it wasn't yours anymore. So it's up to you to take what the universe is giving you
Yeah.
and act upon it."
Yeah. And you did.
Yeah, I'm here, so
Yeah, we're here.
it is.
Yeah, that's absolutely how I felt. So the reason that I kind of got over the fear of, putting something out there for people to experience with the book was that idea. If I didn't and if I waited and something came out just like it, I would have like, it's, heartbreaking because yeah, it's like something, you're so passionate and like, you created something and then watching somebody else do it, yeah, would be, yeah, couldn't have couldn't come back from that, I feel like.
Yeah, I could imagine the one thing that the one idea that I had right before it came out was, uh, I don't believe to this day that I had the skill set to do it or knew the correct way to do it. But I remember going to a restaurant and it was super, super busy. And this was before like they had any app or phone system to link it directly to your like mobile number, like to text you. So I told my wife, I was like, how cool would it be if I could create an app that we could just enter in our phone information and it would just text me back and tell me how long the wait was for specific restaurants, the ones that are
Yeah.
busy. She's
Yeah.
like, that would be really cool. A year later, guess what popped up?
Yeah.
I was like, oh man, we could be living a totally different lifestyle at this point if I would have done this.
But the great part about that is, your ideas are, worthwhile.
Huh?
So then whenever the next one comes around, you're like, okay,
Could I pick that up faster and act upon it? Yeah, awesome. Well, just a couple, honestly, like little follow up questions here. And this one, so I got us on kind of a sidetrack there, but I love books, so I had to ask. Uh, but I asked this question. It's pretty general, but I like to hear the response that I get from everyone because they're all so different. What would you say is the biggest stigma in regards to mental health?
I feel like it's changed so much over time. It used to be not talking about it. And I love the fact that that has changed to where people are more comfortable talking about it. I guess maybe not necessarily a stigma or just a misinformation or misunderstanding, I guess, but just how much it affects the daily lives of people, where, I guess the difference between physical health and mental health, where if you say to somebody, you have a physical issue or disability or whatever it is, people instantly recognize, okay, um, I understand that you are struggling, right? Like if it's, you had a leg amputated or, you have multiple sclerosis or whatever, accept it easier, I guess, and just kind of know that's what you're struggling with versus when, people bring up whatever their mental health issue is, that there isn't the same, understanding or empathy that comes along with, okay, you're struggling, every day, just like somebody who has, a physical issue that, um, so I think just like the acceptance of things weren't talked about in the past and they're talked about more now, I look forward to the day that, like I said, when people have a handicap parking pass and, they park a little bit closer because it's harder for them to get into the grocery store, in the same way that, people talk about, okay, well, I have bipolar disorder and I can't get out of bed some days. And people are like, okay, yeah, absolutely. So, people going out with friends or going to work or, whatever the situation is, there's that immediate kind of understanding and acceptance, like it is so hard some days, just to function. Yeah.
I love it. And if your story could help just one person, what is the one thing you'd want them to take away from it?
So recently I've been kind of focusing on this for myself and for other people. And the idea that, things get better and they can just keep getting better. I guess, not being limited by circumstances or situations or all the things that kind of tend to overwhelm you, that, looking at small things, small victories, small success, um, it just builds. And that idea that, like, whatever you think the best situation or best scenario possible is possible, that it can be better than that. And it's like, and then you get to that point and you didn't think it could get better. And then it keeps getting better. So it's always surprising. And I love hearing from people, that I've talked to and worked with, that it's just so surprising and it's so motivating and uplifting. And, it's just, yeah, that simple idea is one of the best things out there.
That's awesome. I love it. And you've mentioned it a couple times, but I want to emphasize on it is celebrating the small stuff. So what is next for you, right? For your journey, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
So right now, like I said, is I'm working on the third and final book of this series that I've been, 10 years now in the making after the lightning strike, and having the trilogy, done and out there and people experiencing it. If it ever was, you know, able to be made into a movie, book adaptation into a movie, I would love that. That's something that I would want to create and be a part of, and have people, go to the theaters and be excited about, a movie trilogy that's new and different. Spending time with my wife and kids always has been, and it's just continues to amaze me. Our kids are older now, moving into teenage years, and I guess experiencing all of the different stages with them. People talk about, being worried about different parts, the terrible twos, or, kids going into, becoming teenagers and all the drama and things that come along with that, but instead of looking at the negative things, like I said, I'm always trying to look at the positive things. And so I know there's going to be drama. I live in a house with three women, so and they're coming into their own, and I'm sure puberty is going to be a wild ride, and I'm here for it, and it's something that I have no experience with myself, for them, but their mom does, and we get to do it together, and raise kids, to become adults. And it's really such an interesting period. When people talk about having kids, they're really only kids for a short while, and then they're adults forever. It's so, yeah, the time, the next few years before they are adults and, go out on their own, you know, this is what we have with them. So I'm excited about that.
Awesome. I love it. And I have a daughter and two sons, and my daughter is 5 years old now. She's my oldest. And I am completely petrified of those teenage years just
Yeah.
because she's really the best way to describe her is she's a spitfire.
Yeah.
She's really
That's
sweet and
good.
sassy, but I'm totally petrified because I don't know what the future holds with this. Yeah.
Yeah. She's going to be a strong woman.
Yeah. This what I'm hoping for. So,
Yeah.
but
Excellent.
and awesome. Last thing is there anything that we did not discuss today that you would like to bring up?
I don't think so. And that's, I feel like we covered a lot, and yeah, that was excellent questions to get me thinking about, my own stuff, and, um, yeah, introspective, and being able to share everything. That was excellent.
Awesome. Well, I thoroughly enjoyed our time here. I admire the work you're doing, and I'm absolutely glad that you survived
Yeah.
and
Me
that
too.
you're using your story to help people out and push through their own struggles. That's a lot. So thank you again for coming on the show.
Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you to all the listeners out there. Thanks for spending this hour with us. Please share, please follow us, like our stuff, share it, and subscribe. That's the best thing you can do for us right now. Just get our name out there. Thanks again for listening. Until next time.